Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Self-Evident Truth with me, the grumpy old vet. Well, let's talk about this weekend. This weekend was pretty amazing. Friday night were the congressional caucuses for the MIGOP convention, and then Saturday was the full convention. What a tremendous convention it was. It was historic. It's something I'll be proud to tell my grandkids about. Um, it was really amazing. On Friday night, John Smith, former secretary of the Hillsdale Republican Party, ran for fifth district chair and was voted in unanimously. Um, it was tremendous. John earned that. He's worked very hard for conservative principles and for the Republican values across the state of Michigan. He's now an executive board member for MIGOP, and he's going to serve Hillsdale very proud, and I'm sure he's going to serve the 5th Congressional District very proud, and he's going to be uh, a great executive board member for MIGOP. I have no doubt in my mind. But let's get into what happened Friday night. At Friday night's caucus, there was a resolution offered. And let me read that resolution to you now. It says, resolution to formally censure Brent Leiniger, Neil Brady, Mark Wiley, Marnie Kast, Abe Dane, Scott Hodshire, Jeremiah Hodshire, Penny Swan, Glenn Frobel, Margaret Frobel, Susan Avery, Michael Shirkey, and John Inholson, and to no longer support them as members of the Republican Party. Whereas the duly elected precinct delegates of Hillsdale County did properly convene for the Hillsdale County Republican Party November County Convention, called by but not presided over by then Chair Darren Wisely, did nominate and duly elect eligible citizens to the Hillsdale County Republican Executive Committee, and said HCREC did properly meet on Friday, December 2nd, 2022, to elect its officers, including David Mosby as chair of the HCREC for the remainder of the 2021-2022 term and the 2023-2024 term. Whereas a group of individuals from Hillsdale County, led by Brent Leiniger, Neil Brady, Mark Wiley, Marnie Kast, Abe Dane, Scott Hodshire, Jeremiah Hodshire, Penny Swan, Glenn Frobel, Margaret Frobel, and Susan Avery have illegitimately made claim to the Hillsdale County Republican Executive Committee. Whereas the illegitimate group have engaged in frivolous litigation that has done political damage to the Hillsdale County Republican Party, the Republican Party brand, and personal damage to individuals within the legitimate Hillsdale County Republican Party. Whereas the illegitimate group has embraced and supported local corruption in addition to using influence within the Michigan Republican Party and connections with powerful allies such as former Senator Michael Shirkey and current MIGOP Chair Ron Weiser's preferred attorney, MIGOP Staff General Counsel John Inholson, to corrupt the normal administrative process for adjudicating disputes, leaving no option other than for delegates to make a direct judgment on the matter. Resolved. This resolution shall be included in the 5th District Caucus report to the Michigan Republican State Convention to be held on February 18th, 2023, and the convention accepting this report shall be the same as adopting this resolution by the convention body. Resolved, the Michigan Republican Party hereby formally censures Brent Leiniger, Neil Brady, Mark Wiley, Marnie Kast, Abe Dane, Scott Hodshire, Jeremiah Hodshire, Penny Swan, Glenn Frobel, Margaret Frobel, and Susan Avery, and shall forsake any association with the illegitimate group and shall not consider any of them or their listed allies to be a part of the Michigan Republican Party. So they're no longer a part of the Michigan Republican Party. Resolved, this censure shall become null and void when Brent Leiniger et al., which means all of them, 1. Recognize the Hillsdale County Republican Executive Committee was duly elected by the precinct delegates of Hillsdale County at the properly convened Hillsdale County Republican Party County Convention on November 17, 2022 at the appointed location of 7 South Manning Street, Hillsdale, Michigan, and at the appointed time of 6 p.m. Eastern Standard at the call of then HCREC Chair Darren Wisely. 2. Recognize that HCREC Chair David Mosby and the other HCREC officers were duly elected by HCREC members at the properly convened HCREC meeting on Friday, December 2nd, 2022 at the appointed time of 7 p.m. Eastern Standard and the appointed location of 75 North Broad Street, Hillsdale, Michigan. 3. Move to dismiss with prejudice all litigation against the defendants in case number 22-688-Charlie Zulu. 4. Compensate the defendants of 22-688-Charlie Zulu for any legal and personal costs incurred as a result of litigation for 22-688-Charlie Zulu. That resolution on Friday night was presented to the 5th District Caucus. There was discussion, and when the vote happened, out of about 270 delegates, there was about 266 yeas and 4 nays. So 266 of the elected precinct delegates in the 5th Congressional District, which is almost 10 counties, voted overwhelmingly to pass that resolution. That resolution then went to MIGOP, to the board, with the 5th District Caucus report. And they knew it was in there. They read it, and they debated it, and they voted for it and passed it unanimous. So it is a done deal. That resolution has been passed, and Brent Leiniger and his group are not the Republican Party in Hillsdale. The Republican Party in Hillsdale is with David Mosby as the chair, and it will remain like that until 2 years in the next election, and we've got to be very diligent and very careful to watch and see what happens there, because our elections, if they can be fixed in a precinct delegate election in Hillsdale, what else is being fixed in Hillsdale? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Now, we received another packet, and I kind of want to go through that. We got a plaintiff's motion for summary disposition. So even though Brent Leiniger and his group are no longer HCREC, which they claim to be on this lawsuit, and we said from the beginning that they were illegally using the name because they were not the legitimate party. This is what the plaintiff's motion for summary disposition says. Plaintiff Hillsdale County Republican Party Executive Committee, them, not the true HCREC, respectfully request that this court enter judgment in its favor and against defendants pursuant to Michigan Court Rule 2.116 C10. There is no genuine dispute of material fact, not correct. Now, there's no dispute of their facts that they're putting down, but the problem is they didn't give all the facts, right? A perfect lie is truth with things left out, and that's exactly what they did was a perfect lie here. They gave facts, but they didn't give all the facts. So I'm going to give all the facts so that we can take a look at this. There's no genuine dispute of material fact that A, the actions of defendants Darren Wisely, Lance Lashway, John Smith, Jon-Paul Rutan, Josh Gritzmaker on July 28, 2022, purporting to remove duly elected delegates and members of the HCREC were improper and not allowed under Michigan's election law, the Michigan Republican State Committee, hereinafter MIGOP, bylaws, and the HCREC bylaws. Let's just take this letter by letter. Okay, in the Hillsdale Republican Party's bylaws, Article 7, Section 4, that has been there since anybody can remember. It's been there a very long time, that the Hillsdale Republican Party Executive Board can support or disavow Republican candidates running in a contested Republican primary. Now, this was tried back in July of 2020, and at that time, then Chair Steve Veer said, "Oh, that's been there a long time, and we've left it there, but we've got it there for extreme circumstances. We've never used it, but we've got it there for extreme circumstances when we need to." Well, what that is doublespeak for it's good for us, the elites, to use it when we want to, but not for you guys to use it. That's what it was about. So did we use it? Yes. Marnie Cast and a bunch of the others had conspired to fix the precinct delegate election by not letting the America First delegates have their applications to be on the ballot, so that the people of Hillsdale were disenfranchised in being able to vote for who they wanted to. They could only vote for who was put on the ballot. This is election fixing, and that is against the election law. And so they started the process with that. So we disavowed them. Now, what they're trying to say is one of the things they're saying is that we violated the bylaws in doing that. Did we follow the bylaws perfectly? Probably not. I don't know of anybody that's done it perfectly in the last 10 years. I've seen the bylaws violated every meeting when other chairs were in charge. That's including Glenn Frobel, Steve Veer, Mike Clark, even Neil Brady when he was the chair. And yes, I've been going ever since he was the chair. And I've never seen them follow the bylaws perfectly. I don't know that anybody could. We're human. We have tendencies to make mistakes. So, that being said, they're claiming that we broke the election law. They broke the election law. They're breaking the election law now under Michigan Campaign Finance Act. If they are the executive board of the Hillsdale County Republican Party, then any money that comes in, they have to report on campaign finance, and they haven't. And if if somebody's donating money for this lawsuit, which we estimate to be about $40,000 or $50,000, if one person has donated the money for that, then they've broken the law. If you remember, Dinesh D'Souza went to prison when Hillary Clinton pushed it because he donated over $10,000 to a campaign. So if J.J. Hodshire or whoever is funding this lawsuit has paid for the lawsuit that's over $10,000, they've broken election law too. So under the legal doctrine of unclean hands, they have no standing in court. I cannot break a rule and then take you to court for breaking a rule, especially if I'm going to cite the same bylaws or the same set of laws. If I've broken them, I can't accuse you of it. It's the doctrine of unclean hands, and it causes them not to have standing. They had no standing in this case to begin with, and that was just one of the reasons why they didn't have any standing. Then they say B, the August 25th, 2022 special meeting of the HCREC was validly noticed and held. That's not true either. They violated the bylaws there. Now they've got a bunch of paperwork in their briefs that's about 122 pages long. And in those briefs, they've got papers where they show they sent these emails out to everybody. But on that same paper, it says that the emails were sent, but not that there was any record of the emails being received by the other party, i.e., myself and others that were not invited to that meeting. The other thing is we have an email exchange between Jonathan Lindsay and Brent Leininger, in which Brent Leininger admits to not inviting Jonathan Lindsay, who was, by the bylaws, required to be at that meeting, to be invited to that meeting to vote. The other thing is that they broke the bylaws. They had Mike Shirkey there, and they allowed Mike Shirkey to vote in that meeting. Mike Shirkey doesn't have a voting right there by our bylaws. So they violated the bylaws. So again, unclean hands, they didn't have standing to even bring the suit. And then it says C, the individuals elected as officers of the HCREC at its August 25th, 2022 special meetings are the recognized leadership of the Hillsdale County Republican Party with all powers vested under Michigan law. Not true. If you remember, the 825 meeting on an 827 letter by Ron Weiser said that that group was illegitimate, that that meeting was illegitimate. So thereby, if it was an illegitimate meeting, and Michigan MIGOP chair said that they were that not only were they illegitimate, but the meeting was illegitimate, then they were not the Hillsdale County Republican Executive Committee. In fact, they were not the Hillsdale County Executive Committee until their letter from Ron Weiser in December, which was predicated on lies that they got that said that they were. We acquiesced and said, okay, if you got a letter from Ron Weiser just like we did, then you're the chair, you're the party. However, we are going to contest that letter with the credentialing board and with MIGOP because we've got proof that the letter was predicated on lies. And those lies were proven in that resolution, and that's why that resolution was passed almost unanimous in Fifth Caucus, and it was unanimous in MIGOP State Central. So let's go on. D, defendants are not authorized to act on behalf of the Hillsdale County Republican Party or the HCREC. Well, as of 11/17, in respect for the rule of law, even though I believe that it violated my First Amendment right to freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, I had a judge who happens to be part of the third branch of government order me under the threat of losing my liberty or money that I couldn't be a part of that process. So not only did Marnie Cast rob me, but the third branch of government robbed me by a court order. But I abided by it because I knew if I didn't, I'd have people screaming, oh, he doesn't respect the rule of law. Well, I certainly do more than Mark Wiley, because Mark Wiley can refuse to show up to a subpoena for court, and of course, nothing happens to him. He gets his buddy, well, first off, he got his buddy Neil Brady to prosecute his political rivals for free speech, First Amendment protected free speech. And then when the tables were turned, where he had to show up to court and he didn't want to, he just didn't. And so thereby he got, as soon as they got a new judge, then he got his buddy Neil Brady to nolo prosecute and pull the charges so that he didn't get an arrest warrant for failure to appear. So obviously, I decided that I would follow the rule of law, and I acquiesced to it, and I gave up my First Amendment right to show that I would play fair and nice with the court until we could get this straightened out. I did that. I won't anymore, but I did do it then. But obviously, you can see that there's some of us that it doesn't matter what we do, the other side's going to call us wrong, and they're the ones that are in elected power. So you have to question what really the motive is here, right? Elections have consequences. Better find out who you're voting for. So then the defendant is not authorized to hold themselves out as leaders. We didn't. I resigned 11/17, same as Darren, same as everybody. We resigned. And so they're asking that this motion is supported by the accompanying brief, which is incorporated here and by reference. So what they want the judge to do is they want the judge to give them a disposition favorable to what they're asking for, which who really knows what they're asking for at this point in time, because what they're asking for is unattainable to them. If you remember the judge's last order, when they tried to throw a temporary restraining order, a TRO, the judge said no, he was going to leave it up to MIGOP and the credentialing committee to decide, because that was what was in the interest of the public, the best interest of the public. And so it did go to MIGOP credentialing. Now let me explain to you what happened in credentialing. In credentialing, in the credentialing committee, they didn't have all the information first, so they made a decision that half of the delegates from the American First group would go and half the delegates from Brent Leininger's group would go. And then the odd delegate the two of us would have to get together and decide. And if we couldn't decide, that they would come down and rerun a convention. Now, I believe rerunning a convention in open primaries violates Michigan compiled law 168.622, I believe it is, in which it says that all conventions have to be held across the state of Michigan on the same day. So you can't go back in history and redo that. But anyway, so they said that, well, Brent Leininger was pretty sure, since they'd already fixed the election, that if they rerun the convention, that they wouldn't come to originally, that they would have enough people that they could overturn it. So he, for an hour, screamed at one of the MIGOP people, Stu Foster, and so Stu saw what this was all about. So he went to the credentialing department and said, hey, you guys are missing two pieces of information, which one of them was Darren Wisely's resignation letter of 11/17, which showed at that point in time, then the December 2nd notes to the meeting, to the election, which showed that David Mosby was elected for the interim of all as the chair, and he was also elected as the new chair that would take over in January. So instead of Darren Wisely having to call the January convention, which Brent Leininger's group tried to skillfully keep him from doing by having the TRO and the judge's order ordering us to not do that, which they thought they would win, they didn't realize that we had such a strong group of precinct delegates and leaders that they stood up and took charge of their own party and did what needed to be done, and that David Mosby was the appropriate chair to call the January convention. And so the credentialing department flipped, and they said, all right, well, then here's what's going to happen. Because we've got this new information, we're going to allow all of the America First delegates to go to county convention. But because of the letter from Ron Weiser, they were going to go ahead and call Brent Leininger the chair and then see what was going to happen in convention, because they also knew that there was going to be a resolution that was going to be presented in 5th District, and they also knew that there was going to be a resolution that was going to go before MIGOP. And let's face facts credentialing knew that that was going to go because they've been studying this for a while. They've had all the information in front of them, whereas the judge gets an hour to hear the arguments and who wants to read the stack of paper. You know, it's like reading War and Peace twice over for what they filed. So they actually knew all of the truth. And so that's what's happened. That's what went on. Now, oddly, when I got home from the convention and I got my mail on Saturday, I've got a letter in there. Now, if you remember the last huge chunk of paper that they filed on us, asking for this plaintiff's motion for summary disposition was filed on December or on February 13th. You can see it right there. So it was filed on February 13th. Well, I get this dated February 16th. And what it is, it says, enclosed for filing with the court is a certificate of mailing of default request and entry regarding defendant Jon-Paul Rudan. Please return a true copy in the envelope provided. Thank you. So this was they want a default entry entered against me on this lawsuit, on this whole lawsuit. Well, out of all the defendants, I've been the one that has turned in a motion or a defense on every time they filed something. I've filed a motion in defense. So I don't know how I can be in default, especially when the last thing I got was dated February 13th. And then this is, I declare under penalties of perjury that this request has been examined by me and that its contents are true to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, February 10th, 2023, signed by Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe's lawyer, Jonathan Lauterbach. Okay, default entry. Note, default can be entered by a district court clerk without the request of a party. The default of the party named above for failure to plead or otherwise defend is entered on 2/14/2023, and that's signed by Jody Stott. Okay. Then it says, I certify that on this date I served copies of this default on the appropriate parties or their attorneys by first-class mail addressed to their last known address as defined by MCR 2.107C3 on 2/16/2023. How can I be in default? What did I default on? I have filed a motion each and every time. In fact, I was one of the few that filed a motion each and every time. Do you think maybe they're playing another legal game? Because maybe Scott Hodshire knows that I'm going to run for sheriff in 2024. Maybe JJ, who was an illegal undersheriff for 10 years and committed perjury when he took his oath, knowing that he was an illegal undersheriff for those 10 years. And even at times when he was an undersheriff and had to use an MCOLS number and used his brother's MCOLS number and committed fraud, that there's something even more than that buried in that sheriff's department up there that they don't want found out. Kind of seems like it, doesn't it? So they got to have something on me. They have to, a guy that doesn't even have a traffic ticket. I've never even had a traffic ticket. Yet they've got to have something on me to stick, right? Seems like a little bit of dirty wrangling here, a little bit of dirty politics, a little bit of dirty law. So I'd encourage everybody to come to the hearing on March 6th at 8:30 in the morning. And I'm going to request that that be done in person in the Hillsdale County Circuit Court again. That needs to happen. And the people need to come and witness and see how their judicial system works. and how it really works. And let's see if it does work or if it's broken. So I encourage everybody to come. So now, just the last couple little things I got to talk about. Brent Leininger said, well, the reason why that they didn't get to send delegates in is because he got his paperwork in too late. That's a lie. That's an absolute lie, and I explained why earlier. Now, the other thing is we've got someone else, I won't even mention who they are, that's crying about how they're a private citizen and they can't be censured as a private citizen. And no, yeah, you can be. It's just like a church. You can be excommunicated from it. You can be told from any private organization that your actions or your values or your behavior doesn't coincide with theirs, and they can ask you to no longer be part of that. And that's in fact what the MIGOP just did. Now, the other thing is they're claiming that, well, they're having their First Amendment rights violated because I've turned off the comments on my YouTube page and stuff. And no, I've never turned the comments off. It's just I haven't turned them on. I haven't going through that process to figure it out. Sue me. Oh, wait a minute, you already did. Because I don't know how to turn those comments on yet. I will at some point in time. Of course, I'm not going to let her comment. And she's going to go, oh, that's censoring. Yep. It's just like I can censure you in my house. I can tell you you can't use the F word in my house because it's my property. It's me. See, what she doesn't understand is the Constitution is a limit on the power of government. The Bill of Rights are the thou shall not to government. This is why it was wrong what they did to Kelly and Joe, because it was the government that tried to censure and stop their First Amendment right to say what they wanted to say on their site. And then they got a government actor, a prosecuting attorney, to prosecute them for that, to try to take away their liberty or their property. See, this is the restraint the government's supposed to have, not me, the individual. I can tell you in my house and on my site, I don't want your comments. I can say that. I have every right to, and I'm going to observe my rights. Now, if I'm an elected official, then at that point in time, I can't on anything that's official. Just like when Mark Wiley has, or I'm sorry, Neil Brady has shut off Joe Hendy's ability to send an email to him. That's a violation of the First Amendment. Why? Because Neil Brady is a government actor, and that email is a government email. You cannot stop your constituents from being able to speak directly to their elected officials, whether you like them or not. That's the way it is. And that's part of what happens when you raise your hand and say you're going to represent the people. Then you are a servant to the people and you serve them in that capacity. Now, on your personal property, on your personal time, on your personal sites, yeah, you don't have to allow that. But on government sites and government email, and the government then has to be restrained by those enumerated powers that are in the Constitution and by the Bill of Rights that are the thou shall nots to government. So this argument that this person ad nauseum keeps whining and crying about is because she's ignorant of the Constitution. She's ignorant of how it is supposed to chain the government and limit the government, not the individual. So, ignorance, that's what we have to solve, is the ignorance. So, that's been the second episode of the Self-Evident Truths with the grumpy old vet. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you later.